Thanks so much for doing this. Really,
Oh
really.
no, my absolute pleasure. I had such fun last night as well.
Oh, it was great, wasn't it?
Really good, really, really
Just
good.
really nice energy in the room, and just yeah, I mean, you've got such a wonderful kind of fan base, people that are clearly, inspired by your passion as well, that kind of lovely sort of passing the baton type thing, isn't it? Of what inspired you is now inspiring a whole new kind of lovely community as well. I don't know where to start with music with you, to be honest, because there are so many almost kind of jumping in points. But maybe I guess what would be nice because what you talked about last night was kind of your kind of entry into a particular genre of films that really connected with you. And I wondered
Yeah.
whether the music within that also resonated in terms of whether you kind of appreciated with that how important music was in the storytelling.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is for me, and I'm literally pulling up my old sort of Havoc playlist 'cause I wanted to
Oh,
remember
amazing.
what I had for specifically for this one because yeah, I wanted to be because there's some tr tracks. There we go. It was the MIA tracks. Meds and Feds was the one for the truck chase, and it's like I had this whole list of songs I was listening to, obviously like to get into the spirit of right in that project. But in terms of me and my like passion for music as much as film, when I was a kid, like starting to kind of fall in love with music, all the music I started listening to tended to be film scores. Like, because I was such a film nut that the music side of things was always coming from either a soundtrack in a film or a score associated with something. So it was always this weird um, combination of the visual as well as the sort of the oral, you know. So
Yeah.
that was what such a sort of like a fascinating connection for me. And it wasn't really embarrassingly until my brother went to university, and I would have been like 15 at the time, 14, 15 at the time that I started to kind of forge into interest in music that sat outside of film scores. So like my formative years would have been like, my early teens in that respect. So, I listened to whatever was in playing in the car. So as my
Yeah.
dad was playing like Clapton or the
Yeah.
Beatles or the Rolling Stones and that was what we listened to in the car whenever we were going anywhere. But yeah, everything was informed more by film. So like Scorsese, obviously, that led to me listening to a lot of the Rolling Stones. I became obsessed with the Doors, the Oliver Stone film, and then that took me on a whole thing of going through all of their albums. So it was a lot of that kind of world. It always felt like a connection to film as opposed to being just purely music for me.
That's so interesting because I found that as well that sometimes you need like a pass key into something that then like almost like unlocks, and it might be someone giving you something, or like you say, it might be like a film that's about something that then kind of unlocks that kind of interest into that world sort of thing as
Mm,
well. And it was so interesting hearing you kind of last night talk about the genesis of your interest and passion for, whether it be, John Woo or that whole kind of world, the some I guess the broad genres, the martial arts world, I guess.
yeah.
Um that was, do you mind telling that story? Because it's so
Yeah.
lovely just in terms of, yeah, having a real
So it's
physical pet effect on you. It's lovely.
it did, and it was like so for me, like when I was a kid growing up, I wasn't into Marvel and DC and sort of superhero worlds and everything else. I mean, back then, we're talking a long time ago now, they would have been mainly just in the comic book world as opposed to, on the screen as it is now. And so for me, my superheroes were Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan. Like, when I remember when I was probably way too young being at a friend's house and we were playing some video game or whatever or like on the Atari or something and then going downstairs and seeing a sequence from Enter the Dragon playing on his parents' TV and just sort of immediately going like who's that?
Yeah.
And Bruce Lee and his physicality just felt like, oh my God, like that's like godlike status of an action hero. And I'd never seen movement that was both graceful and sort of like aggressive in one foul swoop as I did when I watched those movies. And I remember when I was a kid growing up, my dad would always like, every Saturday was a trip to the video shop. So we would go to watch rugby and watch Neath play live at the stadium. and then we would, but on the way there, we would always stop at the video shop and then pick like a film to watch that night. And I remember, my dad bringing back films like Armor of God and Police Story, and my mind just being blown apart by what Jackie Chan was doing, because Jackie
Mm.
Chan was obviously playing around within the martial arts genre, but also echoing his influences, which would have been like the Buster Keaton and the Charlie Chaplin elements. So there was like humor to action, which I'd never sort of seen before. Like the slapstick element, was with martial arts was something that felt like really fresh and unique. And so yeah, there was always this, like my dad's a cinephile, like he was a teacher at a school teaching computing, but he was a massive cinephile. And so he brought into the house films from like all over the world. So
Wow.
his fixation was the Western and American crime films. So we had a lot of those, but then he was also the person that introduced me to things like Luc Besson's Nikita, or Kurosawa's films, and then
Yeah.
obviously the Hong Kong action films. So yeah, it's been a great sort of school that I had at home, really.
Well, it's really interesting, even thinking about Enter the Dragon and thinking about how something like that, the music, like having someone like Lalo Schifrin do the score
Yeah,
for
yeah.
that. Do you know what I mean? It's like clearly they took it seriously and that they
Mm,
appreciated that having someone who can create, suites and themes to that extent was important, that it was,
yeah.
a very important part of the creative process.
Yeah, and when you watch that film, you cannot imagine Enter the Dragon without that score. Like I can't imagine the opening scenes of like Hong Kong in the 70s without Lola Schifrin's the score across that sequence. And yeah, it's really special. That marriage between sort of the film and the music is, when it comes together and it just clicks, there's just nothing else like it. It's just amazing. It's like slots in. It's like, oh, that's the perfect piece of music for that
Yeah.
sequence then.
And what's the journey been for you with regards to, making films and and navigating your own relationship with how you work with music, you with composers, with, kind of needle drops and that kind of thing. And from you talking about writing
Mm.
playlists for action, for to help you with the writing process as well, to be inspiring.
Yeah, so a lot of my work up until now has been mainly score based. Like, and I've been very gifted, lucky to have Arya Prayogi and Fajar Yuskamal work as my sort of composers on the films I've done up until now. On Havoc, it was just Arya Prayogi, but when the two of them collaborated with me on films since Maranto to The Raid and The Raid 2 and then Apostle, like it's always been a really great collaborative process. Like they always said to me like, oh, the easiest thing to write music for is your action scenes, because there's like an internal rhythm there. And
Hmm.
for me it was a subconscious thing, because I wasn't aware that we were like designing these sequences that had that. I mean, I knew we wanted a percussive energy to it, but I didn't think it would extend to them writing music for it as well. And so yeah, they found that very easy. But we would always collaborate and discuss areas where we could contrast the score with the scene that's playing out. That one key example was they'd written a piece of music maybe for the sequence in the raid, where we
Mm.
had a sequence where Iko has one of his partners on his shoulders and he's got a knife and a stick, and it's like people coming from left and right, behind and in front, and it's an intense little scene within the hallway. And just as an example of like two different pieces of music changing the approach and the sort of the read of that scene, when we did the raid, we had the Indonesian score, but then in the US they had Mike Shinoda and Joe Trapanese come over and do a separate score for the international market. And so when that scene plays, like the Joe Trapanese and Mike Shinoda version of that scene is kind of like up tempo samba beat type vibe to it.
Yeah.
It's got like a certain sort of like rhythm to it that makes it like, oh, this fast paced action scene. Whereas when I worked with Fajar and Oggy on that scene, we were chatting about, oh, let's do something that's in opposition of the pace of the scene. And so we played something that was much sort of like darker and sort of like more foreboding and full of dread, so that
Mm.
it would play different. And it's amazing how the change of those cues can affect the scene in different ways. And not one way is better or the other, but it's just fascinating to see the effect that music has on a read of a scene. But yeah, when we did Apostle, sorry, when we
No,
did
no, this is
Apostle,
great.
when we did Apostle, there was a real interesting conversation there about the music, about the score for that film, because we wanted the whole thing of Apostle was a bunch of people who've kind of like, become outcasts from society, land on this island and have to build a community by themselves. Like they have to
Mm,
build it from scratch. I remember discussing with Tom Pierce, my production designer, saying like, oh, every house should feel like a house, but it's kind of made from cast off bits of wood. Like they're not, necessarily skilled carpenters or tradesmen. They might have one person that's good at stuff, but when they collectively come together, there should be, little rough elements of the construction and the build. So it should be lots of cast off bits of wood. And so that extended into us talking about the music then. So we talked about doing elements of the score where it would feel atonal, where they would like, Augie would enjoy playing a violin badly across some of the score, you know what I mean? Just to kind
mm.
of give us that sense of unease that even the music feels a little bit kind of like creaky and off kilter and stuff like that. So it was a real, like, wonderful sort of like creative process working with them then on that film.
It's amazing. I can't imagine many directors have that luxury of having almost two score versions of films as
Yeah.
well. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a real unusual sort of experience because it's like it, and not in a way of like trying to be lovely to both sides, but it's like
Yeah,
there are moments where I'm like, oh, I like your version more, I like their version more, I like, and then when they're like, oh, which one do you like the most? I'll be like, you're both lovely children, and I love you equally. It's like it's a yeah, yeah. You have to play the sort of safety card in that
yeah.
one.
And then with Havoc, I mean, it's extraordinary. I was talking when we talked about it last night, and this idea of that, you know, you're so celebratory and vocal about your inspirations, but this is a real kind of like a real hybrid of genres, this as
Mhm.
well. Like, and when you talk about the kind of, the inspirations for this, everything from like French Connection to like, Thief and all, and sort of loads of different reference points and John Woo and Ringo and stuff like that. But it's so it's such an exciting film to watch. And two things. One thing was I'm really interested in terms of when you are sitting down to write it and you've got that initial kind of spark of an idea and the idea that you then go and make playlists for
Mhm.
that. And I'm really interested in, you being sat there and looking through whatever it is you create those playlists on, but kind of what's informing those
Yeah.
choices that you then put those pieces of music on those playlists.
Yeah, well, so I've got the playlist sat in front of me now, so I can actually, and it's
Yeah.
so weird. It's become like a weird a trip down memory lane from what was 4 years ago, 5 years ago. You know what I mean? But it's like,
Wow.
so for me, it was like when Mother, because we shot so initially when Mother goes to the morgue and identifies her son, we shot that as a completely individual sequence. Like we weren't planning to intercut it with her going down the corridor to meet with Ching. That was like a last minute idea that we had where I remember talking to the editor and I said, look, we've got this footage from a sequence where she identifies her son in the morgue. I think it gives us a huge amount of emotional understanding of her character that we don't have right now in the film without that scene existing. Is there any way that we can, like, intercut it with her arrival in Chinatown? And so he did a version of it, and we both got like really excited at that to be able to salvage that material because it was going to be a deleted scene forevermore. So it
Yeah.
was great to be able to bring that in. But I remember when we were shooting that sequence because it was just one unbroken sequence, it wasn't going to be intercut with anything. I wanted to use the Nielsen song "Without You." So that was what I was listening to when I wrote that scene. So like the whole thing with the preamble, because we had her walking down a corridor, arriving at the morgue, pulling the
Mm.
sheet back, grabbing the bracelet off her son, and then the sort of the eruption of that would have then taken us into her arriving in Chinatown and pulling the gun out and shooting the three people. And that was all going to be set to "Without You." And I remember playing it on set to UD. UD is is our sort of camera assistant, focus puller who I've worked with in Indonesia on everything, and he came across for Apostle Gangs and Havoc as well. He was
Wow.
my DP camera assistant and focus puller. And every time I played it to him and then showed him like the sequence that we just shot in the edit, he was like he got like goosebumps from it. And it's that weird thing then when it's like it's been in my mind forever since I made the playlist. We shot the scene, I put it in the edit, but then when we chopped the scene up and then put it and reused the footage elsewhere, the track then kind of just detaches from it and
Yeah.
no longer exists in that way. And I think the score now is very effective as opposed to what we planned with the track that inspired it. but it's funny sometimes, like going back and being like, oh yeah, I forgot about that song. I forgot about this.
You didn't
Yeah, and
forget about Geschaffelstein though.
I did not forget about Gesaffelstein. I had Destinations, Obsession, and Pursuit in my playlist. That was in
Yeah.
there as well. But it was quite funny. I was searching for somewhere that I could put In Dulce Jubilo by Mike Oldfield. Like I
Oh
was trying
wow.
to find because it's such a Christmassy sort of like piece of music. And I was
Yeah.
trying to figure out how the hell do I put this in. But at every single moment I tried to stick it into the movie, it just felt tonally so out of place with the rest of the movie.
You've got
But
to
yeah.
listen, haven't you? You have to kind of like it tells you, the film kind of almost
Mm.
tells you kind of what it needs and what it doesn't need and what works and what doesn't work, as much as you've kind of gone, that's what I want.
Yeah. And it was almost like I wrestled for ages, and the only one that I feel was like, oh, this is pushing in a direction here that I'm not sure 100%. And it took me a while to be like, no, go for it and do it because I second guessed myself so many times on this. Was the sort of the cue which was the homage to A Better Tomorrow, when we're on Sunny's face, because it's such an unusual cue to suddenly hit with, and it's so short, but yeah, I was like, nah, fuck it, I want to do this, I want to have that in there. So I was like, oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't know if I was allowed to swear
You
then. But yeah,
swear, you swear.
okay, good.
Come on. I'm
Yeah, I'm
Scottish. It's
trying.
fine.
I know, but I'm trying not to because it's like my little girl who's going to be turning 16 soon. It's like she read the Empire magazine interview, and then it was like within 3 sentences I'd said the F word maybe 2 or 3 times, and she was like, "So yeah, I got to start being more responsible and a better role model for my children." But yeah.
Where does the love of Gustavo come from?
So interestingly, when we were making the Raid 2, um, I was very fortunate when the first Raid came out. Trent Reznor had posted about it, and I've been a big Nine Inch Nails fan for the
Mm,
longest time. I mean, that was that band when I first heard them. That was transformative in the same way that for me, watching Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan and John Woo was transformative. Nine Inch Nails changed everything about my understanding of music. The sort of like it felt so many layers of emotion and also felt cinematic at times, and and I just always loved their work, and Reson's work is phenomenal.
yeah.
Anyway, long story long, because he had expressed fondness for the Raid, like I just latched onto that, and then we reached out when we were doing the Raid 2 and asked if it was possible that he could do like an end credits piece of music for us, because he had done that before for Tetsuo 3 Bullet Man, which is a great series of films from Japan out there, which are like real sort of like, cyberpunk body
Mm.
horror films from Shinya Tsukamoto. And so I knew he had precedent for that. And so I thought I'll be cheeky and reach out. And he was really game for it. But he was trying to get, I think we were trying at the time to get the rights to do a cover version of Pursuit, which would
Wow.
have played over the back end of the Raid 2 as the credits rolled. But I think we were unable. I think it had already been licensed for a cover for something else at that time. So that kind of fell by the wayside. And then obviously Nine Inch Nails were touring at the time. And so he was very, very gracious and was saying, look, he knew that we had like the minuscule budget. We didn't have much to play with. And he was like, oh, if there's anything that you want to use from like the Ghosts album, which they owned, you know what I mean? He was like, if there's anything you want to use from there, like let me know and we could figure something out. And so I asked for like 2 tracks from the Ghosts, and we went to him with like the smallest amount of money. I was almost embarrassed to kind of go up to him with it, but God bless him. Like he was like really like generous, and said like
Amazing.
have these 2 tracks. You know what I mean? Don't worry. And then we got to use them across the back half of the film, and I've never been prouder than to be able to feature, music from an artist that I deeply, deeply admire, and probably,
Wow.
overly fanboy over in the closing moments of the film. So yeah.
That's amazing. It's just like that's what you want your kind of heroes to do, isn't it? In terms of
Oh
like
yeah.
be supportive and and help those kind of talents that are kind of at the start of their career or kind of,
Yeah.
it's like that's
And
great. It's good to hear.
he was the nicest guy as well. I had a
They're
brief chance
so
to kind of meet
nice.
him and sit down. He was so lovely, like really lovely and really supportive. So yeah.
I've not met them in person yet. I've done like 3 Zoom records like this for the podcast with them, and I'm still so intimidated even by just the idea of them. But the reality
Yeah.
is they're so lovely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And everybody just talks so hard. I love that score they did for Challengers with Luca. I thought that was
Mm.
amazing.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Can't wait to see what they do for the Neutron film as well. I think
Yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
that's going to be super exciting. But yeah, one thing that I was kind of blown away by last night was the idea that you write the like Havoc as an example, write in the film, but you don't write the kind of action sequences into the
Mm.
script. They're almost physically written between yourself and your team, including Jude, who was there last night, sort of thing, if that's right. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
how does that work? Because in my head, I have you like building stuff with cardboard boxes and sort of kind of just sort of,
That's exactly it. Yeah.
playing.
It's the most insane time ever. It's like in the script, usually what I will put down in the script is basically you know, better written than this, but it would be like these are the characters involved in the sequence. This is the psychology of the scene. I try to cover a tone and a feeling of energy. Like, is it meant to be comedic? Is it meant to be serious? Is it meant to be very dark? Is there a horror element to the action that's going to unfold? Like for an example, like, when using gangs as an example, which is a great sort of like opportunity, is like that pub fight was like Elliot was described as being like a shark, and he's always going forward, and he's like, blitzing through this pub, and then every single person comes up, he takes care of them in quick succession. It's brutal, it's sharp, it's hard, and it's tough, but it's quick and it's fast. When we get to the final fight in Gangs episode one, when he fights against Len, who's like the guy in the sort of the underpants and the wellies with the meat cleaver, it was described as a sort of almost like a horror film, like a slasher movie, like that slow stalk and slash vibe. And in that, those are two very different sort of tonal descriptors of fight sequences. But that's usually it. And I might have like an idea in mind for how I want the scene to end,
Yeah,
and I might put that in. So like with Len, it was always the cleaver gets embedded in the wall and then he lands on it. Like that was always in the script. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be how the scene ends once we have gone through the process of designing it.
yeah,
So there are like little key ideas, and then we get together in a room, crash mats, cardboard boxes, and then Jude and then his team of amazing stunt performers that I've had the pleasure of working with like multiple times now on
mm,
projects. And we literally just like, there's no hierarchy. We all sit around the room and we all come up with ideas of what the choreography could be, how to shape it, how to put it all together. And if one of our ideas is great and lives up to the scrutiny that we put it under, then it's in the scene. And if it doesn't, it gets dismissed, and it doesn't matter whose idea it was. So it doesn't matter if I come up with an idea. If they're all like, Gareth, we love you, but that's terrible, then
yeah,
we'll interrogate it. And if after that I'm like, oh yeah, you're right, it is terrible, it just goes away, it gets filed off into the ether. But yeah, it's a great process, and we come away from that process with like videos then, which are shot by shot, edit by edit, but all within a crash mat
yeah,
and
yeah,
cardboard
yeah.
box world.
And do you ever have music playing in the room? Like, do you ever kind of like sort of have like for kind of I don't know, and music has that kind of ability to sort of
It
inject
dep
energy
it
and yeah,
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes what I might do, like for the next thing that we're doing now that we're hoping to shoot this summer, I'll share like the playlist. So
yeah,
I've been saying to like to Jude, because he's across this next one as well. I'll send him a playlist and say like, oh, this piece of music is going to inform the emotion I want to get to by the
okay,
end of that scene.
yeah,
And then he knows then psychologically we need to take that character through that journey by the end of that sequence. So whatever we
yeah,
design for it has to get us there.
mm,
And that's the thing I love about working with Jude, because, there are lots of different stunt performers, lots of different stunt coordinators, and and different personalities that work within our industry. But what I love about Jude is that like he has a sensitivity to him as a human being, and like he's not coming into this like amped up with testosterone about, oh, we could do this, we
yeah,
could do that, and it'll be badass. And like he comes from like an understanding and a desire to understand the character and the psychological implications of a character within a sequence. So
yeah,
he knows there's a story to be told about character and about and story, as opposed to it just being, hey Gareth, I've always wanted to put this kick in a film, or
yeah, 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 yeah,
but yeah. And there are moments obviously where we have these little punchline moments where we'd be like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did that? Because we're still creating spectacle,
yeah.
but it's with that undercurrent of something to ground it then.
What um what music does Walker listen to?
So I don't know what Walker listens to because he seems quite a dark place. I can't imagine him driving his car listening to anything other than self-help tapes. Because by God, he needs them. But and actually, that was one of the little sort of details we had. Like around his RV, there are little post-it notes of like quotes from self-help books and stuff, which are dotted around the place. So yeah, that's probably what he should be listening to if he turned his radio on. But I was playing like in my playlist, my Walker tracks were there's a song called "I'll Cut You Down" by Uncle Acid and the Dead Beats. There's one called "Let It Burn" by Goat,
Yeah,
which is a great track. And then the last one, which was going for the longest time was going to be the way that we were going to close the film out, was "So Far From Your Weapon" by the Dead Weather. It's like it's a real unusual track, but it had this sort of I was looking at sort of like a dark blues jazzy sort of vibe to Walker, and so
yeah,
with Augie when he was writing the score for the film, um, that was like my first leaping off point. I remember saying to him like Walker's theme should feel like jazzy freestyle jazz with blues to it and like a
yeah,
tinge of that. And so when we were at the crime scene, I always remember saying to him like, oh like like a crazy saxophone performance like that goes into hysterics when the people are being shot and taking us back to Walker's headspace, kind of like that Angelo Badalamenti version of like what he did for like Lost Highway, like the Bill Pullman scenes in Lost Highway. I was like riffing on that a lot and saying like, giving me that histrionic, give me that sort of like the sort of the wild and the chaos. And the one thing I really loved that we started playing with in Havoc was having abrupt hard cut moments in the cues. So when he's there lost in his thought, and then suddenly someone comes in and taps his shoulder, and
yeah.
hey, it goes.
Yeah, because it
And we did
takes
it
you
like once or
outside of his
twice.
internalization straight into the moment.
Yeah, yeah,
Totally.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
So that
Right,
was a fun little discovery.
before we run out of time, musicals.
Yes, yes.
So, this was a revelation last night where you were like, I want to make a musical.
Hmm.
Your big Dirty Dancing was something that I
Dirty
randomly
Dancing
mentioned
is.
and you were like, I'm a big fan.
I
Tell
grew up
me
watching
about
that.
same. I could like recite you so much of the script, kind of like it's
Hmm.
yeah, unbelievable. But where yeah, I mean so many questions. Love of musicals. What's the dream of Gareth Evans musical?
Okay,
Um
so yeah, so first of all, I can see the La La Land poster behind you, and I
yeah,
love that film so much. It's like it's a beautiful, beautiful movie,
yeah.
and and that felt like a throwback to the sort of the classic musicals that I love watching as well. So my daughter's obsessed with like musical theater and does tap dancing and ballet and everything else. So we started going down the sort of the rabbit hole of when I shared like Singing in the Rain with her, like we watched
Oh,
that like repeatedly. You know what I mean? She loves that movie. We love like Gene Kelly movies. So
oh my, all
American in
day could watch.
Paris,
Yeah, oh,
Anchors Away, all of that stuff. On the Town,
yeah.
and then also Swing Time and I'm just fascinated by musicals from that era. But there was also I really enjoyed there was a South Korean movie called Swing Kids,
Okay.
which was really interesting. It's like a modern film. It came out about maybe 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, maybe longer than that now. But it's like a tap dance movie about the sort of like a occupied area of Korea during the war.
Wow.
And it's a brilliant film. It gets dark in places. It's got like obviously it's a dark undercurrent there, but
Yeah.
the musical numbers are great and the dance sequences are electrifying. But I've always been fascinated because I've done so many things with like within an action discipline and like the way that I shoot action, the jigsaw piece element
Choreography.
to it. Exactly. I've always wondered if the way I shoot action would translate to dance, but then the area I start questioning is the fact that a lot of the dance numbers that I've loved watching have been those evolving masters. Like you're the sort of when you're where you're just you're watching Gene Kelly and Donald O'Connor do these amazing performances. So like I mentioned last night, the Moses Opposes sequence. I love. There's a moment there when they're dancing and they leap up onto a chair and then leap back off the chair and you can see the camera kind of dip and then down
Hmm.
and it's like and I watch that and I'm like maybe that subconsciously got into my head because I would look for a shot like that myself within the action discipline. So yeah, I love that world of filmmaking. So I'd have to have an idea that felt, appropriate to it, or someone comes to me with an idea of something as a musical. But that's definitely a genre I'm interested in. But yeah,
Oh
Dirty
my
Dancing was my whole childhood. I remember when like my mum, as well as every single mum on our entire street of our village, became obsessed with Patrick Swayze when that came
God.
out on VHS, and
Yeah.
and so yeah.
Another film you mentioned last night, am I right in thinking it's your script supervisor that worked on it, was Good Morning
Oh,
Vietnam? And not as a not a musical, but I had the cassette of that soundtrack, which had
yes.
all the radio, like Robin Williams doing Good Morning, time to rock you from Delta DMC. All had and I went through two cassettes of that because I listened to
Oh,
it so much. That was such a special film in terms of
yeah.
how you were the music took you in, but also that part of him as the radio DJ and stuff was just so clever.
And it's weird anyway because it's almost like I had a fascination with like the Vietnam War, and but then on the back of that, you get this, obviously unfortunately, but you get this incredible plethora of music that is associated with it. I remember watching Tour of Duty, and then like they were filled with like the most amazing needle drops of music that were reflective of the cultural shift of that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I find it fascinating. But it's funny you say that about cassettes of soundtracks because I was obsessed with playing La Bamba over and over again. I remember when La Bamba came
Yeah.
out, just like playing the tape over and over and over again. So yeah,
Yeah, obsessed. Listen, I feel like I'm excited about the next chance we get to talk because
definitely.
there's just it's really lovely to get the chance to kind of dive into your wonderful creative brain that's yeah, your enthusiasm's so infectious. It's really lovely. And I can't wait for your musical. Can't
Thank you so
wait.
much.
Can't wait. Get Tread and Atticus onto that. That'd be like
Yeah,
they can
yeah,
do the
there we go.
music. I'm there. I'm there.
There
Listen,
you go.
congratulations on Havoc. And I think 2 weeks and we're going to know what this next project is as well. So
Yes.
we
Yeah,
look
yeah.
forward to finding out and celebrating and looking forward to what that is as well.